If you missed part one, my introduction video, I suggest you go back and watch it. But my name is Emily Newman, and I'm so excited to be partnering with Strathmore to kind of share with you my abstract process and introduce you to some absolutely incredible materials. Today, I'm going to be laying a fluid foundation on 2 canvases and beginning to work on 2 really large abstract pieces. To begin this process, I am going to kind of visualize my composition and then mix my fluid colors. I'm going to be starting with a lot of water and dampening my canvas so that my pigments can kind of move freely. For my composition, what I'm typically picturing in my head is something tight and closed that opens up to reveal beauty. I have found that most of my work seems very floral inspired, as it is this closed bud that opens up with petals revealing beauty inside. So I'm kind of picturing just a pouring out of emotion, and it kind of helps me process whatever's going on in my heart and my head. One of my favorite soft brushes here is the Princeton Umbria flat wash, and I've got another thin brush here. We're going to go ahead and wet the canvas and get started laying kind of a fluid foundation. Now, the wetter my canvas is here, the more movement I am going to get as I use the acrylic inks to add pigment to the water. And I have my canvas feeling pretty nice and saturated here. And I can go ahead and let this water set a little bit while I mix my colors. And I'm going to come in here with some burnt sienna, and I'm going to desaturate it quite a bit with a lot of water and a lot of white pigment. I put a little bit of water directly into my pigments and use my brush to mix it up. Get a nice peachy color. Now I can use my brush to come in here with my pigments and really start to add them to my piece. Now it is the natural flow of the pigment into the water that I love to see happen. So sometimes I have to end up adding more water so I get more movement. If you can see here where the canvas is more saturated, I'm getting a lot more flow. I am kind of adding my pigments too in a way that I'm going to have more saturated edges that kind of bleed into one another on the canvas. I can come in with a clean and completely wet brush and add more water here to create more movement, as well as pushing down on the canvas and allowing the pigments to kind of mix with the water. I'm going to kind of wrap these around the edges so that if this canvas doesn't end up framed in the end, it's still going to have a really beautiful finish on the edges. And I don't mind at all if this paint gets down on my LVP flooring, because I just use a magic eraser and tend to wipe it right off my floors. Another thing you can do with your fluid paints here is take your canvas and kind of pour it in one way or another. I'm going to create some movement by allowing the water to pour down my canvas in different directions to create a very organic feel throughout my fluid paints. I'm going to come in and add just a little bit more fluid painting through here just for some interest. Again, as I'm just kind of picturing my composition where we have a tight, more concentrated color effect here, and it's going to open up throughout the piece. I like to use a lot of kind of twisting and movement with my wrist as I am painting as well. And that kind of keeps me loose, keeps the painting loose and feeling less forced. This part of the process is kind of what takes the longest, as the fluid paints, if they're super wet, they take a while to dry. So sometimes I like to come in with these drier pigments a little bit and manipulate while it's drying. As a piece is drying, I do like to sometimes come in with a paper towel to manipulate and create texture in different areas. I feel like my oranges are separating a little bit from the white here and creating more of an orangey than a peach that I'm looking for. And so I'm actually just going to use this paper towel to kind of soak up some of that water where the orange pigments are pooling. You can also come in with this Catalyst Wedge brush and create more movement with my pigments. So as you can see, I have a strong fluid foundation here on my piece. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm actually going to take this full jar of water that I have here from my paints, that's kind of the runoff and the wash off from peach, and I'm gonna add a few bits of Payne's Gray to that just to kind of see what happens. Mix it a little bit, and I got this really lovely dark blue gray. What I'm gonna do now is add just a few touches of this blue gray onto my piece. Where it can also mix in to the peach color a little bit. What I'm gonna do now is I'm actually going to add a little bit more water to create a little more flow before I start with my line work. Coming back in with my catalyst, I'm going to soften that and create some movement here. And this part of the process really is intuitive, and it just takes creating more and more. The more time you spend on it, the more you understand your piece and the materials and how they interact. I love the way this water is naturally flowing. But I'm going to add a little bit of control to it and drag these darker pigments towards my edge. Now that the foundation is laid for this piece, I'm going to wrap up this video and just ask that you come back as I continue on my third video of the series and complete these abstract pieces, adding some line work as well as some heavy body acrylic and texture using the System 3 paints.